Greeting YouTube. I don't know how many of you are aware, but during the 50s and 60s, there were two shows, Leave It to Beaver and Ozzie and Harriet, that for many people kind of encapsulated a certain era in Americana. They were sort of a snapshot of what some Americans thought America was. And it kind of became a mythology. You can also see a similar strain in the kind of picture that the world was given for like Lassie and other shows like that. Basically, it was all of the all the television series that projected this middle class or working class life with a heteronormative cisgender family, a father and a mother, particularly in Leave It to Beaver and Ozzie and Harriet, and then their kids, and the precocious adventures that the kids got on, and how the parents dealt with it and everything. But it projected this mythological view of America, this perfectly white Christian, socially conservative, politically conservative, fiscally conservative worldview. And there seems to be a whole lot of Americans that pine for that America. There's just one small problem. It isn't real. It was never real. Now, I'm not saying that there were not places in America that had the look of those television series. I can tell you right now, in my neighborhood when I was growing up, everybody was white. The neighborhood I live in right now, everyone around me is white. Though we have new neighbors up the block who I haven't met yet, so I have no idea what their ethnicity is. And I'm not a neighborly kind of guy. I keep to myself. Even more so now since the elections in November. So it's not hard to grasp that some Americans really did grow up in very white areas of America. And as I've talked about in previous videos, many of those white areas were created by redlining minorities and pushing them into ghettos. The ghettos that we, the white culture of America, created. And many Americans are still holding on to that image of America that was put forth in Ozzie and Harriet and Leave It to Beaver. But it's all a myth. It was never real. Because even if I live in a white neighborhood, and even if I did live in a white neighborhood when I was a kid, it didn't mean that there were no brown people, no black people, no Asian people. It did not mean there were no Muslim people, no Sikhs, no Buddhists, no Jewish people. They were everywhere. They just weren't necessarily where I lived. But they were still in my state. They were still in my country. And the systems that allowed those little bastions of white culture to survive and thrive were built on the oppression of those minority groups, the othering of those minority groups. I heard of something on NPR recently about people from California are moving to Idaho because they feel it more perfectly suits their comfort zone, their ideal life. Guess what Idaho is? The whitest friggin' state in America. So yes, there are conservatives from California moving to Idaho so they can get away from the multicultural reality of our world and pretend that they're living in a place outside of that. It's an incredibly elaborate cosplay. It's a live action RPG, except it's ugly. I'd rather have people dressing up as elves and vampires and ogres and such. At least those people are just doing it for fun. The people that are pretending that white America is America are doing it because they're bigots. because they fear things that are different from themselves. And part of that is the reason that we now have the Jester King in the White House. That fear was played on, blocking people from Muslim majority countries, repeatedly telling the leaders of other countries that their policies of allowing immigrants and refugees into their nations was bad for them. The rise of the neo-Nazis. White supremacy is now everywhere. I mean, his top advisors are actual white supremacists. Not sort of, kind of, maybe, you could probably skew some of the things they say as being white supremacists. No. They're actual white supremacists. And they're playing off the mythology of Leave It to Beaver and Ozzie and Harriet. And that's sick. So when they say make America great again, what they mean is make America white again. But America's never been white. So what they're saying is make sure that white people are in charge. Make sure that white culture is the dominant culture. Make sure that white culture makes all the decisions for everybody else. Make sure that Christians are in charge. Even though the endorsement of any particular religion by the U.S. government is a violation of the First Amendment. The first one. You don't have to read very far. Just get to that first one. But a lot of Americans seem to skip that and they jump right to the number 2. They like number 2. They don't like many of the aspects of number 1. Frankly, 1 and 4 are my favorites. And I'm disturbed by this. I'm disturbed by the whole idea that people are trying to hold on to an image of America that never existed. That was fictitious when it was made. And it's fictitious now. And yet they're basing policies and doctrines and laws on a myth. And it's ugly. And it violates our ideals. And it's spitting in the face of modernity itself. If you can't face the modern world, well, then bow out, folks. Stop engaging with it. But stop making policies and endorsing policies that hurt everyone. Because I can guarantee you the policies being backed by the Jester King and the GOP are going to hurt all the people that support them as well. It's going to hurt poor Americans of every particular ethnicity. It's going to hurt gay people and trans people, and they are everywhere, in every family. You don't have to shake a family tree very far to find someone that's going to be hurt by these laws. It's going to hurt women who make up the majority in this country. More than 50% of America is women, yet our policies are being dictated by men, which doesn't seem really fair to them women now, does it? But stop pretending that television shows are real. Stop pretending that white America, the image that it holds in its mind, collective cultural unconsciousness, is anything but a myth. Start facing reality. It's a lot more colorful and more diverse than white culture may like, but I find it quite refreshing. I enjoy being exposed to different points of view, different cultures, different languages, different peoples. I find it enlightening and broadening. It doesn't scare me at all. So I guess when it comes down to it, I'm asking white culture, stop being scared.